Prince Edward and Queen Margaret. Most people in England were very ignorant at this time, and believed in magic and witches, and anything they could not understand they at once believed to be done by magic. So when the young Prince Henry grew up a weak young man, in the mind and body, the doctors were not clever enough to find out what was the matter with him, and the people believed he had been bewitched. And the wife of his guardian, Duke Humphrey, was accused of having bewitched him. They said that this poor lady, Eleanor Cobham, had made a wax figure of the king and melted it before the fire, and that as it melted the king's health and wits melted away with it. She was tried for this and found guilty. She had the good luck not to be burnt alive, a thing which very often happened to people who were said to be witches. But she was made to walk in a white sheet, with bare head and bare feet, carrying a lighted candle through the streets of London, to show that she was sorry for what she had never done. Then she was sent out of England for ever, and the disgrace of this broke her husband's heart, so that he died. The wars in France began again, but the English got the better of the fighting, and France had almost lost all hope of getting back the kingdom, when a young shepherdess named Joan of Arc dreamed that she saw the angels of God, and that they told her she should be the means of winning back his kingdom for the King of France. The King of England said that he was also the King of France, but Joan of Arc said this could not be, and she insisted on having the young Prince of France crowned as king. She dressed in men's clothes and carried a sword and rode on a war horse. She had a great white flag with white lilies, the arms of France, embroidered on it. She led the soldiers to Orleans, and they took it from the English. At first the French were driven back and would have retreated, but Joan of Arc cried, "Wait, eat and drink. Then I will lead you forward again, and as soon as my white flag touches the wall, you shall enter the fort." Her bravery made them brave, and when she led them forward the second time, they burst into the town and took it. She took Troyes and Rheims, and the young prince was crowned at Rheims in her presence. The English were beaten, and Joan of Arc begged leave to go back to her sheep, but they would not let her go, and some of the French priests forgot all the good that she had done for France, and betrayed her into the hands of the English. And the French and English priests together joined to have her burnt as a witch. She was burnt in the market-place at Rouen, and died clasping a cross to her breast. As the flames reached her, poor Joan's head sank upon her breast, and she died, a martyr indeed. "We are lost," said an English soldier, as he saw her die. "We have killed a saint." And indeed the cause of England in France was from that moment a lost cause. During all these fights of kings and barons, the French and English, the poor people of England, had from time to time tried to make the king and the nobles see how unhappy they were, and how much they were oppressed by the great lords. In the reign of Richard II, 30 or 40 years before, the labourers of Kent and Essex had got together all their scythes and billhooks, and had made spears of poles with long knives tied at the end, and armed in this way they had marched to London to demand their rights. A good priest, John Ball, who had for years been preaching against the wickedness of the rich, led part of this army of poor men. The others were led by Wat Tyler, a brave man who was filled with anger at the cruelties practised on the poor. They marched to London, and the English king promised everything that they wanted. But the Lord Mayor of London killed their leader, Wat Tyler, and then the wicked young king took back all his promises. Many poor people were killed, so that the others gave up hope and went back again to their lives of unending work and misery. Then, again in this reign, the people of Kent were very angry, because France had been lost, and they were also made very miserable by the wickedness of the rich people. So once more they tried to call the king's attention to their wrongs. Here again many promises were made to the people, and the people, believing the promises would be kept, went back to their homes. Their leader, Jack Cade, was killed by the Sheriff of Kent, and directly he was dead, all the complaints of the poor were forgotten, and all the promises that had been made were broken. Henry VI grew up to be a very silly man. His wife Margaret of Anjou wanted to govern the kingdom herself, but many noblemen and gentlemen and the people of London wished to take away the crown from the poor king, and to have the Duke of York for king. Some gentlemen were walking to the Temple Garden after dinner, disputing about the king and the Duke of York. Some of the gentlemen did not like to speak out plainly, and say which they preferred. Then said Richard Plantagenet, the leader of the Yorkist party, "Since you are tongue-tied and so loath to speak, let him that is a true-born gentleman, and stands upon the honour of his birth, if he believes that I have spoken true, from off this briar pluck a white rose with me." The Earl of Somerset, who wanted Henry to remain king, said, "Let him that is not coward, nor no flatterer, but dare maintain the party of the truth, pluck a red rose from off this thorn with me." Then some plucked red, and some plucked white roses, and those that plucked red roses said, "We have our swords here, which shall dye your white rose in a bloody red." "Meantime," said the others, "your cheeks are as pale as our roses, for you are pale with fear, in witness that the truth is on our side." So they all quarrelled and parted. The party of York was called the party of the White Rose, and the party of Lancaster, who wished Henry to be king, was called the party of the Red Rose. And this was the beginning of the War of the Roses, which lasted for 30 years. Queen Margaret got an army together to drive away the Duke of York. A battle was fought at Northampton, and Henry was taken prisoner. The Queen with the little Prince Edward got away to Scotland, and the Duke of York ruled England with the King's consent. But the Queen, who was very brave, though very cruel, got together another army. She fought the Duke of York, and at last beat him at Wakefield. She cut off his head, put a paper crown upon it, and stuck it up on one of the gates of York. His second son, Lord Rutland, cried out for mercy to Lord Clifford, but Lord Clifford's father had been killed in one of the other battles, and he said, "As your father killed mine, I will kill you," and he plunged his dagger into Lord Rutland's heart. A great many battles were fought, and thousands of Englishmen were killed. Poor King Henry hid for some time in Scotland, sleeping in woods and caves, and sometimes nearly dying of hunger. The Queen got another army together, but she was beaten at Hexham. King Henry was taken prisoner and sent to the Tower. The Queen and the young prince managed to get away into the woods. However, they were caught by 2 robbers, who took away the Queen's jewels and bracelets and necklaces. The Queen and Prince stood trembling, feeling quite sure that the robbers would kill them. But the robbers could not agree about dividing the jewels. And while they were quarrelling as to which should have the most, the Queen caught up her little son in her arms and slipped quietly away among the dark bushes of the forest. There she wandered all night, hoping to meet with someone who was on her side, and who would help her to get away with her child to some safe place. At last she met a man with a spear and a sort of dagger. Seeing by her dress that she was a great lady, he spoke to her roughly and said, "Give me your jewels and money, or I will have your life." "My jewels and money have been taken from me," cried the poor Queen. "I have nothing left but this, my only treasure." She pointed to the child and fell on her knees before the robber. "I am Margaret, Queen of England," she said, "and this is my son, the young prince. The nobles and the people of England have forgotten what they owe to their king and their queen, since they have set aside the laws of England. Show me now that an outlaw can be more gentle and more noble than they." "By my faith in God, I will," said the robber, touched by her appeal. He took her in his hut and hid her there till her enemies had ceased to look for her, and then he managed, by disguising her and the little prince, to get them safe over to Flanders. This brave queen was not yet beaten. She got more men together and came to fight the new Duke of York, who had been made King of England. The new king had got over some German soldiers, who instead of fighting with swords and bows and arrows, fought with strange new weapons, guns, which till then had never been used in war. He also used heavy cannon, and so it was that he beat Margaret. She lost the battle and was taken prisoner. Her young son, too, was found on the battlefield by the new king, who asked him how he dared to come over with an army. "I come to recover my father's kingdom," said the brave youth. And the new king brutally struck him in his face with his glove, and one of his lords killed the boy with a dagger. Henry VI died in the Tower, a prisoner, and most people think he was murdered. A sad end for the son of the great king who won the Battle of Agincourt. Margaret lived miserably for 9 years after her son, Prince Edward, was killed, and for 5 of those years she was kept a prisoner in the Tower. Then the King of France paid money for her, and she was allowed to go to France, where she died.